So this is episode 5 of our podcast, and I want to start out with a really important question.
Okay, shoot.
What is your favorite game to play in Vegas when you're at the,
Whichever one I'm winning at the time, but between the two, blackjack and roulette. But I have more luck at roulette for some reason.
All right.
Roulette.
Do you think your propensity to gamble has anything to do with being an entrepreneur?
Yes, I think it's the risk, but also a calculated risk, so you don't want to just be stupid and throw money out there. So it's figuring out how to figure out the game and risking money to see if you can make more.
Right.
So yeah, I think
Which is probably why you like roulette and blackjack, right? It's not a slot machine where you pull the same thing every time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you like to be like odds and evens, and if I do this, then it's 1 in 17 chance. And,
I want to play a game.
Right.
And I want to win.
Right.
So yeah, the competitiveness and the risk, right up my alley.
You are listening to The Anatomy of a Startup, a Wellbeing Coffee production. Enjoy.
This episode is about finding our niche and kind of occupying a space that would allow us to outcompete or whatever and make money as you would in Vegas. And most successful companies to me seem to fall into one of two categories, right? So they either find an unoccupied niche in the market and take advantage of it, or it's a saturated market, there's no niche, and so they find a new piece of technology or innovation, right, that allows them to kind of outperform the people, the saturated market, the competitors in the market.
Right.
I think we fall into the first category, or fell in it for when we were in the office coffee service, for sure, which where we were the roaster in this office coffee service space, and nobody was doing that. So tell us about that, how you realized that it was, how you came upon the realization that it was an unoccupied space, and what you decided to do about it.
Right. So, getting into OCS, I talked to several people in the industry, and they said, don't do it. It's a crowded space. It's cutthroat. Margins are bad. It's just not a good idea. And I was like, man, but no one is roasting their own coffee, direct trade sourcing, working with nonprofits, and then selling to the office. So we have this story. We have really good control over our coffee, and we are able to create the margin because we're cutting out that middleman. And it just seemed like such a good idea to me. Everybody else was saying no. And I said, you know what, I just want to try it, because being a roaster in the retail field, one, it's really hard to make money online until you build enough of a brand. And then trying to sell locally to restaurants and to cafes, so many roasters are doing that. It was just a crowded space, like you said. So how could I sell and move our coffee but make enough of a margin to make it work? And office coffee was really the answer, because we may produce our coffee for what? I don't know.
Oh, like
Ish.
per pound?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, put me on the spot.
I mean, it's definitely a range, but let's say it's $3 to $5.
Yeah.
Right?
Probably less than that.
Right,
Yeah.
depending on which bean.
Yeah.
But when we would go to sell to a cafe or to a grocery store, they have to resell it and make a profit, right? So how can we move a lot of coffee to the end user? And that's the office, where we could now sell for $14 per pound. So if our cost is $3 to $5, we're selling 14. Those margins are incredible, and you're getting these offices on a contract where they're going to buy bulk. It was just like, what's wrong with this idea? And so I just jumped forward, even though a lot of people said I shouldn't.
Yeah. Did you have to learn that lesson from the failure is a strong word. It was kind of a failure.
It was a failure.
Failure of the kiosk. I mean, right. So did you have to learn, like, okay, there are occupied spaces in the market, there are unoccupied spaces in the market. I need to look for something that is more unoccupied than what I'm doing? Or did you think that maybe the drive-through coffee kiosk place was kind of opportunistic and kind of unoccupied when you started that?
I did. I thought it was niche enough, because they are all over the place, West Coast. If you go to Portland or Seattle, I mean, you see these little drive-through coffee booths everywhere.
Yeah.
So I thought I was going to have enough of a niche to do that here. The problem is, right, and then franchise it. But the problem was, landlords on the East Coast, at least in Raleigh-Durham, they don't want to rent out a small parcel. They want to give you a half acre, which just didn't make sense for our business plan.
Right.
So it was really hard to find a good location. So the idea of the booth was great, but it just isn't feasible without a lot of time and money to put a large enough drive-through there in this area. So yes, I think it was a great idea. Didn't work for us for a purpose, I think. I was actually very happy looking back that it failed because our whole business is in a new direction now.
Right.
But then I had to figure out what's that new niche within being a roaster. And I just knew the other routes of e-commerce or selling locally wholesale to, cafes or restaurants just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
This was the only thing that made sense to me.
I agree, and it definitely worked for us. So we found that spot. We were a roaster making coffee for $3 and selling it for $14, right? So that's great. And so actually, I think we were able to use that advantage to then kind of spread out into the OCS space even more. So how did those big margins on these products like help grow the business and help us do things like, it's kind of a leading question, but snacks and drinks?
Sure.
And
So I knew I needed to build a business. I didn't want to be the entrepreneur that just works my business. I wanted to work on the business, which means I need employees. The only way to pay employees is if you have enough of a margin to pay those salaries and have the warehouse space and the office space. So I knew I couldn't just do all of it myself. So I had to have that margin. And yes, it created that margin for us, because if I would have only made $4 profit per pound versus maybe 10, I would have had to work in it nonstop. There just wouldn't be enough money for me to hire staff. And so it really helped me grow the business with that margin. And that's something that new entrepreneurs or struggling entrepreneurs need to know. Like, you really have to know the margin and what your true costs are based on your goals that you want one day. And I knew I was going to have a staff around me to really grow a business.
Yeah. So it helped get more employees. We also did a few other things that brought in a lot more revenue that I think were kind of unexpected and kind of caught some of our competitors off guard. And that was that, people said, "Oh, don't go into the OCS space. It's a saturated market." And then once you got in there, like, okay, well, now you're here, but you can't charge any rentals on these coffee machine equipments that you're going to place, because nobody's going to want to pay for it. But I mean, that turned out not to be true as well, right?
So a couple things here. When I first got in, everybody wanted K-Cups, right? Well, we're a roaster. I don't want to sell them K-Cups.
Right.
One, they're terrible for the environment. They're super expensive. But I wanted to sell my coffee. But everyone wants this whole single serve option of convenience. And so in order to do our coffee single serve, we need these super expensive bean to cup machines that are $4,000, maybe $5,000.
Yeah.
So I've already failed at 2 businesses and spent all of our money. Now I'm in debt and trying for the 3rd time. How in the world am I going to buy these $4,000 or $5,000 machines?
Yeah.
The only way to do it is to charge a rental and then charge for a long period of time. So I was having to get 36-month or 60-month contracts with that rental, where my competitors would say no contract, no rental. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, it was an uphill battle. But then I could take that piece of paper, sell it to the bank. They give me the money for the equipment. There's a little profit margin built in, and that helped float the inventory. Without that strategy, it would have never worked.
Right.
I would have had maybe 2 or 3 clients to start, and then I'd have to have enough profit to buy a whole nother machine. Cash flow just didn't work.
Yeah.
And so that was another reason people told me this idea wouldn't work, because it's so cash flow intensive for the equipment. But there's little things, if you really want to do something, there's ways around it. I mean, yes, we were an uphill battle because our competitors are so big, but it's all about the bottom line. I mean, when I talk to customers, I'm like, does it really matter if you're renting the equipment and getting a cheaper per pound cup of coffee? Or is it just about the no rental? So
Right.
we created that Excel spreadsheet, which actually you did because I'm terrible at Excel. So we put together this quoting document.
Yeah.
So we'd compare, Canteen and Capital and all of our different competitors. And what they would do is they would charge $16, $17, $18 per pound, but give a free rental. Nothing's free.
Right.
Nothing. So I had to just show that to the decision makers and say, actually, you'll probably save money with my model because it's a flat rate. So when your usage exceeds a certain amount, then you have a flat cost instead of paying $17, $18 per pound.
Yeah.
It's all about painting the picture, telling the story. And it was an uphill battle. Once I said the word rental or contract, they were,
Right.
caught off guard. But it's just about selling it. So if you want to do something, there's always a way. You just have to figure it out, but figure out how to realistically sell that picture.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, after we started doing that, some of our competitors started charging rentals. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
I guess you can do this.
Yeah,
And
it's really crazy.
Yeah.
Nobody did.
Yeah.
And they kept saying no one's going to sign. So when they did, and our competitors realized we're winning contracts over them, and we're
and charging more money for
charging, rentals and long-term contracts, they started doing it.
Yeah.
And now, pretty sure most of our competitors or past competitors in this area are now charging rentals.
Yeah. And even when, obviously our competitors were larger and had more buying power. So even when we were more expensive, I think there was that element of, but okay, that's even fine because we're a premium product, locally roasted. We offered better service and cleaning and maintenance and restocking than our competitors did. So like even if we were a little bit more expensive, which was pretty rare, it wasn't hard to show and get referrals and say, look, that might even be true, but we're outperforming our competitors and getting contracts because people are tired of having, subpar service.
Well, that's something I always tell new entrepreneurs or people wanting to start a business is you never want to be the cheapest or even sell on price, because it's always going to be a price war and they're going to go with whoever's the cheapest. But oftentimes when you're the cheapest, that is a perceived cheap quality.
Yeah.
And I wanted to have a high-end coffee and a high-end customer service feel to Wellbeing. And so I didn't want to be the cheapest, but I never sold on price. I would go in and show the value of working with us from best customer service. They were dealing with the owner. So like all the decisions, they could come directly to me. That was a huge win, but also the quality. And so we would always do demos where a lot of our competitors wouldn't. And I just wanted to show them hands-on. I'm going to put this $4,000 machine in your office for free for a couple weeks, give you some product, and it's going to sell itself. And then at that point, then cost is brought into the picture, which matters. Like, we couldn't be exorbitantly more expensive, but if we could make it pretty comparable, we would win.
Yep. Yeah. And yeah, it worked. We grew a lot. And so after we started doing that, we started charging rentals. We were selling our coffee, and then we moved into the snack space as well. So we kind of so we filled this niche in the market where we could make a lot of money being the roaster, selling direct bulk to an end user that wasn't in a cafe. But then that allowed us to spread out even more into that space and offer things that we wouldn't have been able to offer otherwise, right? Because we had to, we have to buy a bag of Cheetos at Sam's for $1 and sell it for $1.50. But that's somewhat okay when we had the product with our coffee where we could buy it, buy it for $3, sell it for 14 or whatever. So people again told me don't get into snacks and drinks, and it's a nightmare. I think I was opposed to it.
I think everybody was, but what I realized is if I'm going to take our truck somewhere and stop it, I want to sell as much as I can to that break room.
Yeah.
And a lot of these decision makers want simple. So they want one vendor. They want to do not just coffee, but all the snacks, drinks, water service, etc. And so if I was going to go and try to compete with the big dogs and get these large, pharmaceutical accounts or tech accounts, I had to offer that. I needed to be a, one source break room vendor. And so we had an opportunity that was a really large publicly traded company, and they had to have snacks and drinks. And actually that would be the bulk of their purchases. And I said, if we can make this work, then let's get into snacks and drinks. So we quoted this account for 11 months, finally got it,
Yep.
And then we were officially in the snack business. So I don't think it would have made sense to just dabble in it. We needed to get in it. And that was kind of the tipping point, is if we get this contract, we're doing it. And then business boomed. It ended up being about 50% of our business in snacks, drinks, pantry.
Yep.
And I love it. I mean, the employer is paying for snacks and drinks for the employee, And they loved that, and they would fly through snacks. So just revenue was incredible.
Yeah. And our bottom line worked out with that, even though we were paying a little more, I think, than our competitors for these other products. I mean, it's not so much, it's about your total profit margin, not, necessarily, you got to piece all that together. It's not just about, you do want to try to make as much of a margin as you can on all items, but if you have to make 25% on one to make and 75% on another, it's, you do have to keep all that in mind and kind of take the overall average.
And that's something I learned too. Sometimes we wouldn't even make money at all on a product, but it's something they had to have.
Yeah.
And I would rather secure the contract to move our coffee and
we have to have Tabasco sauce. It's like, fine,
right, I know.
I'll buy it for $6 and sell it for $6 if
I know.
you just buy everything else from us.
You find out from the client what's important to you, what do you need? And as long as I could still make money and Wellbeing can still make money, then I'm going to do it all day long. But it really is coming down to finding out what they need when you're in that sales process and figuring out how to make your books make sense too.
So is the takeaway then from all of this that like you should start by finding a niche and then like get that right and then like spread out into that space more as you are successful in that one part? Or do you ever think there's a time where it'd be appropriate to kind of tackle everything at once?
Oh, so this is a big question because, I try to encourage entrepreneurs to just start. Like if you have an idea and you believe it and you feel like it's good, it's better to start, but it's so important to make sure it makes sense. So it's not just the business plan, but how are you really going to separate yourself from the competitors? I mean, if you're brand new in the market and you have a Me Too product, how are you going to sell it? Now, you may be an incredible salesperson, or you may have an incredible network or lines of distribution, then you're going to be a lot better. For me, I had nothing. I had no credibility, no accounts, no portfolio or anything. Yeah. So to be successful, I had to be different. And I would say, for most people, if you're wanting to get into a business, do a ton of market research and talk to a lot of people who have been successful to get their advice, but you have to have something to separate so you can sell on that fact. So 9 times out of 10, I would say make sure you have some sort of a niche, but there is that off chance if you already have a distribution line or you're well connected, then it doesn't have to be completely different.
Yeah, if you just sold your toothpaste business and now you're going to get into like mouthwash, like you probably know, you know the people that you need to know to make this new thing work, even if it is an occupied space.
Right.
But you have enough background to kind of get into that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that's it for today.
Awesome.
So we'll definitely be back next week with another podcast, but this has been fun.
Cool. Yeah, love it.
Again.
Love talking about this whole topic. And again, I'm always here to help entrepreneurs and helping them get started. That's the biggest fear. So if I can help people get over that and any of our successes or failures, I'm happy to.
Awesome.
Cool. Thanks.
Thanks.